They handed my brother the keys to a brand new house and tossed me a $5 lottery ticket, laughing, "Better luck next time." I forced a smile, my chest burning with years of sacrifice, dismissed in a single cruel joke. That night, I scratched the ticket under the dim light of my rented apartment and froze. $134 million. My hands trembled, my heart roared. Fate had given me a weapon. They thought I was powerless, a forgotten daughter. They had no idea what was coming. If you were me, would you stay silent or burn everything down? The living room sparkled with warm lights, and the smell of roasted turkey filled the air. It should have been a moment of family joy, but my stomach twisted with unease as everyone gathered around my parents. My brother, David, stood tall in the center, beaming with pride. My father pulled out a small velvet box, and for a heartbeat I wondered if perhaps, just maybe, this was a surprise for me. When David opened the box, a pair of house keys gleamed under the chandelier. My parents announced with teary eyes that the family had bought him his first home. Applause erupted, laughter filled the room, and relatives clapped him on the back. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to smile. Then my mother turned toward me with a smirk, slipped her hand into her purse, and pulled out a folded lottery ticket. "Here, Emily," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Your gift. Who knows? Maybe you'll get lucky." The room erupted again, this time with mocking laughter. My uncle shouted, "Better luck next time," while my aunt whispered something to her daughter, both snickering. Someone pulled out their phone and started recording, catching the moment of my brother kissing the keys while I held a flimsy $5 ticket in my trembling hand. My face burned hot, my throat tightened, but I kept my smile frozen in place. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. What none of us knew in that instant was that the video would soon make its way online, uploaded to a cousin's private social media account. By the next morning, strangers across the internet would watch me become the punchline of my own family's cruelty. But in that moment, surrounded by clinking glasses and fake congratulations, I just swallowed the humiliation like I had swallowed so many wounds before. Later that night, when the laughter had faded and the house quieted, I excused myself to the bathroom and stared into the mirror. My reflection was pale, lips trembling, eyes wet. I wanted to scream, but instead I whispered to my own image, "Keep smiling, don't let them win." Then I walked back into the room, sat down, and played the role of the forgotten daughter a little longer. I thought that was rock bottom, but the truth is, the bottom was still waiting for me. Back in my tiny apartment, I placed the lottery ticket on the counter. The walls of the room were cracked, paint peeling, the heater struggling against the cold. I stared at the ticket with bitterness. That's all I was worth to them, a joke, a gamble. As I cleaned up the stack of unpaid bills from the kitchen table, my eyes landed on an old photograph, me standing in a hospital waiting room, paperwork in hand, the night David broke his leg in college. I had paid the entire bill. Months later, I covered his tuition when he failed his courses. My parents had praised him for finding his way, while chastising me for not doing more. The truth was, I had done everything. Memory after memory washed over me. The endless hours at work to cover debts that weren't mine. The phone calls at midnight demanding help. The guilt trips my mother perfected, reminding me I was selfish whenever I asked for even a shred of recognition. my father's silence whenever I raised the unfairness. The weight of those years pressed down on me until I sat on the couch, holding my head in my hands, sobbing. The sound echoed through the hollow apartment. No one knocked on the door. No one cared. I was utterly alone. When the tears subsided, I shuffled to the desk drawer to grab a pen. As I pulled it open, a thin folder slid out. Inside, tucked between old bank statements, was a document I hadn't noticed before. It was a copy of my mother's updated will, accidentally left behind after she visited months ago. My heart pounded as I scanned the text. There it was in black and white. My name struck through. Everything from the family home to savings accounts had been designated to David. My chest hollowed out, the betrayal slicing deeper than any cruel joke at a party. They hadn't just laughed at me, they had erased me. I clutched the paper until my knuckles went white. My breaths came shallow, uneven. Rage warred with grief, despair tangled with disbelief. For years, I told myself loyalty mattered, that family was sacred, that love meant sacrifice. But now I saw the truth, stark and undeniable. I had been nothing but a servant in my own bloodline, useful only until drained dry. I closed my eyes and whispered to the empty room. If you were me, would you still stay silent, or would you finally burn it all down? The lottery ticket lay forgotten on the counter for 2 days. I stared at it every time I walked by, half tempted to throw it away. It was tainted with humiliation, a cruel reminder of that night. Yet on the third evening, with the cold air leaking through the window and a stack of bills demanding attention, I picked it up. My fingers trembled as I scratched away the silver coating with a coin. At first, I thought my eyes were deceiving me. Then the numbers aligned. Line after line, the symbols lit up with impossible luck. $134 million. The coin slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. I sank into the chair, my pulse racing so fast I thought I might faint. My hands shook uncontrollably, my vision blurred with tears. I pressed both palms against my mouth to stifle a scream, but the sound still burst out, raw and broken. Laughter and sobs collided in my throat, spilling into the empty room. I had nothing, and now I had everything. I stood, pacing back and forth, clutching the ticket like it was a live wire. Years of their cruelty, their neglect, their manipulation flashed before me. Every insult, every demand, every sacrifice unnoticed. My tears streamed hot down my cheeks, but beneath them rose something new. A quiet, burning resolve. This wasn't just luck. This was a weapon. I collapsed onto the couch, clutching the ticket to my chest, whispering, "They thought I was nothing." The corners of my lips twisted into a bitter smile. Now they have no idea what's coming. And yet, a darker thought crept in, curling like smoke through my joy. If they found out, they wouldn't just beg or manipulate. They would strip me bare, claw at everything, maybe even ruin me to get what they wanted. I shivered, the victory souring with fear. I knew then this secret had to stay buried. The next morning, I drove across town to the one person I still trusted, Samantha, my childhood best friend. When I told her, her jaw dropped, then she threw her arms around me, laughing and crying at once. "Emily, this is your chance," she said, gripping my shoulders. "Don't tell them. Don't you dare tell them." I promised I wouldn't. Only she would know. Together, we mapped out the first steps, claim the winnings carefully, hire a financial advisor, build walls before the wolves came sniffing. But as we plotted in hushed voices, something else was happening beyond my awareness. The video from the party, the cruel laughter, the mocking gift, had leaked onto social media. It spread like wildfire. Strangers who didn't know my name reposted it with captions like, "This is heartbreaking," and "How can family be this cruel?" By the time I learned of it, thousands of comments flooded beneath. People furious on my behalf, strangers writing, "She deserves better," "This broke me," "Protect Emily." I didn't know it yet, but the world was already on my side. Back in my apartment that night, I sat at my desk, journal open, pen trembling in my hand. For years I had written in these pages about endurance, how to survive their demands, how to keep going when I felt invisible. This time was different. I wrote, "I am done being the pawn in their game. I am not their servant, not their scapegoat, not their forgotten daughter. I will never let them use me again. This time I move first." The words steadied me. My chest lifted with each line, like I was building armor with ink. When I closed the journal, my reflection in the window looked different, stronger, sharper. And then came the sound that froze me. My phone buzzed with a notification. I opened the message and my stomach dropped. It was an audio file forwarded anonymously. With shaking fingers, I pressed play. My mother's voice spilled out, sharp and cold. "We need to make sure Emily signs away any claims. She doesn't deserve a cent. She'll ruin everything if she gets even a little." Another voice joined, my brother's. "Don't worry, she's weak. She'll fold like always." My blood turned to ice. My breath caught in my throat. They weren't just laughing at me. They were plotting to erase me completely. I clutched the phone, my heart hammering, and whispered to the empty room. "They think I'm still their pawn, but they have no idea I've already become the player." The morning after hearing the recording, I knew I couldn't waste another second. Fear still coiled in my stomach, but I forced myself to act. I scheduled an appointment with a discreet financial attorney recommended by Samantha. His office was tucked inside a nondescript building downtown, the kind of place you'd pass without noticing. Inside, his handshake was firm, his expression neutral, like he'd seen every kind of secret in the world. "I want anonymity," I said, my voice shaking but steady enough. "No one can know I claimed the winnings. Not my parents, not my brother, not anyone connected to them." He nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll establish a trust. The money won't be in your name. We'll use a layered structure to protect your identity. This won't be traceable to you." For the first time, I felt a spark of safety. We spoke for hours about investments, tax shelters, the creation of a foundation that could operate publicly without tying directly back to me. I signed paperwork with a hand that no longer trembled quite as much. When I walked out, the city lights felt sharper, like the world was shifting in my favor. Still, something gnawed at me. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial too. Memories of years lending money, transferring savings temporarily to cover their debts, gnawed at me. I wanted to know just how deep the theft went. That night, I downloaded a financial analysis app Samantha had suggested, one that used artificial intelligence to scan old bank statements and categorize spending. I fed in every file I had, years of PDFs, screenshots, and old emails. The program worked through the night. By morning, the results glared at me from the screen. Transfers I barely remembered. Withdrawals authorized under my name, but signed in someone else's hand. My stomach lurched as I saw my parents' names linked to accounts I never opened. And David, my brother, had been siphoning money through subtle monthly withdrawals for years. It wasn't just neglect, it was calculated theft. I leaned back in my chair, bile rising. Rage heated my skin, but beneath it was a chilling clarity. This wasn't family squabbling, this was fraud, and I had evidence. I whispered to myself, this doesn't just expose their greed, it reveals a crime that could put them in court. I saved the files to an encrypted drive, locking it away. My hands trembled, not with fear this time, but with a strange thrill. For the first time, the power was shifting, but I knew I couldn't fight alone. I began to build my team quietly. Samantha, always my anchor, helped me vet people who could be trusted. We found a financial advisor experienced in high-profile inheritances, a woman who'd once exposed corruption in a powerful family. A journalist friend of Samantha's agreed to discreetly follow leads, curious about the viral video of the lottery humiliation making waves online. Piece by piece, I was weaving a net strong enough to hold me if I fell. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. A week later, I received a knock at my door. It was my aunt, my mother's younger sister. She had always seemed kind, quiet, often overshadowed by my domineering mother. I hesitated before letting her in, but her eyes were soft, her voice trembling. I saw the video, she said, clutching a folder to her chest. I couldn't stay silent anymore. You deserve to know the truth. She handed me the folder. Inside were photocopies of legal documents, contracts, bank transfers, and even notes in my mother's handwriting. They revealed years of manipulation, proof that my family had conspired to divert assets meant for both children solely into David's name. I felt the air leave my lungs. My aunt reached for my hand. I stayed quiet too long, but you're stronger than they realize. I want to help you. The tears came before I could stop them. For so long I had fought alone, shouldering humiliation in silence. Now, for the first time, someone from within the family stood beside me. I sobbed into her shoulder, the weight of years lifting just a little. That night, as I sat surrounded by documents, recordings, and allies, I opened my journal again. The words flowed fast, urgent. I am not the victim anymore. I have proof. I have allies. I have power. And I will use it. When I set the pen down, I whispered into the stillness. The plan is written, and I've chosen the night to strike, Christmas Eve, when they least expect it. The snow crunched under my heels as I stepped out of the sleek, black car. My dress shimmered beneath the glow of holiday lights, the fur collar framing my face like a crown. For once, I wasn't arriving as the forgotten daughter. I walked up the steps to my parents' house with my head high, the kind of confidence that comes only when you're holding secrets powerful enough to level an empire. Inside, the family bustled around the Christmas tree, laughter echoing through the halls. When I entered, conversation stilled. Their eyes scanned me, my tailored gown, my polished hair, the quiet gleam of a diamond bracelet. My brother frowned, muttering, "Where'd she get that?" My mother forced a smile, brittle and thin. I let the silence build before I spoke. "Merry Christmas." My voice was steady, almost casual. "I brought gifts this year, for myself." Confusion rippled through the room. Then, slowly, I reached into my purse and pulled out a small velvet box, not unlike the one they had once handed to my brother. Inside wasn't a house key but a photograph, me standing in front of a sprawling modern mansion. Gasps filled the air. "That's yours?" my father stammered. "Yes," I said, savoring the word. "Bought it last month, and this." From my bag, I slid a glossy photo of a sleek sports car. "Merry Christmas to me." The silence turned sharp, broken only by the crackle of the fireplace. Finally, my brother barked, "How the hell did you afford that?" I waited, then drew out the folded lottery ticket, carefully preserved in a protective sleeve. I held it up like a blade of justice. "Remember this?" Their eyes widened, recognition dawning. My mother's face drained of color. My father's jaw fell open. A cousin whispered, "That's the one, from the party." I smiled, bitter and triumphant. $5, that's what you thought I was worth, $5. And it turned into 134 million. The room erupted, shouts, disbelief, denial. My brother lunged forward, grabbing for the ticket, but I pulled it back. "Don't bother," I said coolly. "It's already cashed, already protected, and I'm not here to ask, I'm here to tell." Then came the moment I'd prepared for. With a single press on my phone, the speakers hidden in my purse came alive. My mother's voice rang through the room, cold and cruel. "We need to make sure Emily signs away any claims. She doesn't deserve a cent." Gasps rippled like an earthquake. My brother's voice followed. "She's weak. She'll fold like always." The room fractured. Relatives exchanged horrified looks, whispers spreading like fire. My mother's face twisted, sputtering denials, but the recording played on, damning and undeniable. I let the silence hang when it ended. Then I leaned forward, my voice cutting through the tension. I was weak once, not anymore. Their faces, pale and trembling, were everything I'd imagined: panic, shame, rage. But I wasn't finished. I glanced toward the Christmas tree, lights blinking in chaotic rhythm, and whispered almost to myself, "This isn't even the final gift." Because I had saved something far more devastating for the world beyond these walls. Later that night, I sat in my car parked a few blocks away, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. On my phone, the video uploaded, footage of the party humiliation, the lottery ticket reveal, the recordings of their schemes, even the documents my aunt had given me. Within minutes, it began to spread. Notifications poured in, faster than I could count. Comments, shares, hashtags. Justice for Emily was trending by morning. Strangers flooded my messages with support. "You're not alone. We believe you. Family shouldn't hurt you like this." And then came the message I hadn't expected. From a respected journalist, someone whose work had toppled powerful corporations. "I saw your story. Let's talk. The world needs to hear all of it." Twist upon twist, the scandal grew beyond the boundaries of my family. What had begun as humiliation in a living room had become a national outrage. But in the quiet of the car, as the snow fell softly outside, I allowed myself a pause. My chest heaved with sobs I hadn't realized I was holding. Relief, grief, triumph, and pain all tangled together. For the first time in years, I felt free, but freedom carried its own weight. I wiped my tears, took a shaky breath, and whispered, "This is only the beginning." Because I knew the courts were next, and in that arena, the real reckoning awaited. The courthouse buzzed with anticipation. Reporters crowded the steps, their cameras flashing like strobe lights, as I walked past in a black suit, my chin held high. Justice for Emily signs waved in the air, strangers chanting my name like I had become a symbol larger than myself. The heavy doors creaked open, swallowing me into the echo of marble halls, where the fight of my life awaited. Inside, my parents sat stiffly at the defense table, their lawyer whispering furiously. My brother slouched beside them, his arrogance drained to something brittle and pale. I took my seat, heart pounding but steady. My lawyer leaned close, his voice calm. "We have everything we need, just breathe." The trial began. Exhibits were displayed on massive screens. Transfers from my accounts into theirs, signatures forged, assets redirected without my consent. The room gasped as the recordings played again, their voices plotting to erase me. Each revelation landed like a hammer, cracking through their defenses. My father's jaw clenched, my mother dabbed at imaginary tears, but the evidence was undeniable. Then came the twist I hadn't seen coming. A woman in the gallery stood. She was older, her hands shaking as she clutched a stack of papers. With the judge's permission, she approached. "Your Honor," she said, her voice breaking. "I, too, was manipulated by this family. They convinced me to invest in a property scheme that never existed. I lost my retirement savings." The courtroom erupted. Murmurs swept through the gallery as others followed. Neighbors, distant relatives, even a former business partner. One by one they testified, painting a portrait of a family not just cruel to me, but predatory to anyone within reach. I sat frozen, my pulse in my ears. This wasn't only my story anymore, it was theirs too. The web of betrayal stretched wider than I had ever realized. My lawyer seized the moment, weaving their testimonies into a case of systemic fraud. By the end of the week, the verdict came. My brother was ordered to forfeit the house, acquired through stolen funds. My parents faced charges of financial misconduct and perjury. Their lawyers' shoulders slumped in defeat, their reputations shattered before the world. Even the relatives who once laughed with them now turned their backs, unwilling to be tainted by the fallout. I watched as my family, my blood, crumbled under the weight of their own greed. They had thought me powerless, disposable. Now they sat broken, cornered by truth. And yet, as the gavel struck and the courtroom emptied, I felt no triumph, only a strange stillness, like the eye of a storm. I whispered to myself, "They've fallen, but the real surprise is still mine to give." When the dust settled, the consequences rippled outward. My family's finances collapsed under restitution orders and lawsuits. Their once sterling name, whispered with respect in our town, became a curse. Businesses cut ties, neighbors avoided them, the very community they lorded over now recoiled in disgust. I sat in my apartment one evening, staring at an old photograph. My parents, younger, smiling with me at a picnic long ago. David was a boy then, clinging to my arm. For a moment, my chest ached with something almost like grief. The family I had longed for never truly existed. I pressed the photo against my heart, tears slipping free, but regret never came. I had given everything, and they had chosen betrayal. The next day, I stood at a podium surrounded by reporters. Cameras clicked, microphones thrust toward me. I could have gloated, could have reveled in their downfall. But instead, I took a deep breath. I know what it feels like to be dismissed, manipulated, erased by the very people who should protect you. I am not the only one. Too many suffer in silence. That ends today. I am dedicating part of my winnings to establish the Boundaries Foundation, a fund to support victims of family exploitation and manipulation. No one deserves to fight this battle alone. The crowd erupted, not with gossip, but with cheers. For once, the story wasn't about humiliation, it was about hope. As I stepped away from the microphones, my chest lifted with something lighter than revenge. This wasn't about destroying them anymore. It was about building something new, something greater. I paused on the courthouse steps, looking at the sea of faces chanting my name, and whispered under my breath, "This isn't the end, it's the beginning." The silence after the trial felt different. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring at midnight, demanding money or favors. I wasn't checking my bank account in fear of another accidental withdrawal. The chain between me and them had finally snapped. I cut off all communication, blocked numbers, sealed old letters, left no forwarding address. It wasn't cruelty, it was survival. I poured myself into creating the life they had told me I didn't deserve. I bought a home that reflected my spirit, open, filled with sunlight, walls painted with colors I chose for myself. But more than possessions, I carved out boundaries. I built rules for my time, my emotions, my peace. No longer would guilt or manipulation dictate my choices. The podcast began as an idea scribbled in my journal, a place to speak the truth without shame. I called it From Betrayal to Billionaire. In the first episode, my voice shook as I recounted the humiliation of that Christmas gift. But soon, listeners poured in. Messages arrived daily, thousands of people confessing their own stories of family betrayal. I wasn't alone anymore, and neither were they. I sat one afternoon in the recording studio, a cup of coffee cooling beside me, across from a young woman named Claire. She was barely 20, eyes rimmed red from tears. "My parents told me I was worthless unless I gave them everything," she whispered. I reached across the table, taking her hand. "I know that pain. They trained us to believe our worth depended on what we could provide. But listen to me, you are not a servant. You are not disposable. You have the right to a life that is yours." Her eyes widened, brimming with hope. At that moment, I wasn't just telling her. I was telling myself over and over, sealing the truth into my bones. When the recording ended, Claire hugged me. "Thank you, you saved me tonight." As I watched her walk away, I realized the real victory wasn't in tearing down my family. It was in lifting up others who still lived in that shadow. I whispered to the empty studio, "My future is bigger than my freedom. It has to be." With the foundation already underway, I turned my attention to something lasting. I established scholarships for young women abandoned or manipulated by their families, women like me who needed a second chance. I funded shelters and legal aid programs for those escaping financial or emotional abuse. I named the initiative not after myself, but after the countless unnamed victims who had written to me, the Silent No More Fund. One morning, as I scrolled through my phone, I saw something that made me freeze. A trending hashtag, Inner Emily Strong. People who had once pitied me now called me a hero. Articles described me not as a victim, but as the woman who turned betrayal into a movement. Clips from my podcast circulated widely, quoted as mantras. Family is love, not ownership. Boundaries are freedom. Silence is not loyalty. The community that had watched me crumble under a cruel joke now lifted me high. It was surreal, humbling, and overwhelming. Months later, I stood on a stage at a women's empowerment conference. Thousands of faces looked up at me. Some cried, some cheered, all listening. My voice was steady as I said, "They tried to erase me. They told me I was nothing. But today I stand here, not as their daughter, not as their servant, but as my own person. And so can you." The applause thundered through the hall, but the sound that mattered most was the quiet inside my chest, a peace I had never known. That evening I drove to the coast. The sun was sinking, painting the sky with gold and crimson. I walked barefoot along the sand, the waves kissing my ankles. The ocean stretched endless before me, wide and free. I stopped, letting the wind whip through my hair, and whispered words I had waited a lifetime to say. I didn't just survive, I was reborn. The tide rolled in, carrying my voice out to sea, and I knew this was the true ending and the true beginning.